Ends Meet is a horror thriller. It's a novel, my first book. There it is. And it's kind of a revisionist horror novel set in the here and now. I suppose at its core, in terms of specific subgenre, it's a piece of werewolf fiction, although I don't really like to use that word. We'll get to that later. Yeah, so it's definitely a horror novel, and it kind of bleeds over into a mystery thriller as well. It's kind of not a whodunit, but there's certain aspects of kind of like the old Giallo films of the early 70s, in terms of there's a killer in there as well as these creatures. It's my heroes, or my anti-heroes should I say, are the monsters. I call them the half-breeds, so they're, it's a different slant like that. It's not, oh, there's a monster bumping people off, who is it, who, it's not like that at all. My monsters are my anti-heroes, and I say anti-heroes because it's definitely grey in terms of character. There's no black and white. I'm asking you basically to root for people who murder and eat people, so I'm asking you to get behind these characters. So they're definitely anti-heroes, and then kind of in the midst of all this you have a police procedural. You kind of see, the reader kind of enters their world through the eyes of a detective, who's on their trail and kind of putting pieces together of the impossible, and then from there, there's the aspect of another mystery, another thriller. Once that kind of gets solved, the book goes in another direction and leads to something bigger, which I can't reveal now, but it kind of goes beyond what we initially thought was the plot into something far more frightening and larger scale. So yeah, the underlying themes are there's a lot in there. This is a book I kind of take, when I said revisionist horror, I kind of take a look at it from, obviously it's fiction and it's horror fiction, so it'd be foolish for me to say you take a realist slant on it, but kind of there's a neo-realist slant in terms of these are people dealing with a debilitating disease, and that was kind of my jumping off point. There's no, like I said, there's no silver bullets, there's none of that crap, and this is, so it's tread as a disease. These people are learning to live with this crippling physical disease, deformity, whatever you want to call it. And then there's the toll it takes not only on the body but the mind, the guilt. These are inherently decent people who have to live with the fact that they've just killed and eaten somebody, and the effect it has on body and mind, and the people around them who care for them. If you got someone who's dealing with cancer long term, it's amazing how it affects their carers or their loved ones or their family, and it kind of looks at all that. This is a book about adults for adults. All my characters are middle-aged and they're dealing with real world problems. No money, paying the mortgage, things like that, and as a species or as a subspecies, they've kind of outlived their purpose. I always thought of like William Holden in Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch and that group, that they're no longer relevant, and they're kind of watching as life passes them by, and they've kind of been left behind. They've been left behind by progress, by technology, by the microchip. What place does folklore have, in the modern world? These are all deeply lonely, marginalised people. So, that was something else I wanted to take a look at. And in the midst of all that, first and foremost, this is a horror novel. Okay, I want it to be fun. As a writer, I'm going after your gut, and definitely not your intellect. I want it to hurt. I want it to feel like you've been kicked in the stomach. At the end of the day, it's about blood and claws and teeth and big 7-foot monsters, brawling and kicking the shit out of each other. So it's important that for all, whatever exists there, it's important to remember that first and foremost, this is a bloody horror novel. So, those are some of the themes. Tonally, I hope the book's really distinctive. It's a horror thriller, but it's also hopefully very funny. It's got a pitch black sense of humour to it, gallows humour running throughout, and I think that's important. It kind of humanises the characters. The important thing is, not to let the humour dictate. This isn't a horror thriller comedy at all. It's a horror thriller, but there is some humour there. It can't get in the way of the tension or the story, but there has to be enough there just to diffuse the tension or kind of throw you off guard. And hopefully there's some, sickly funny stuff in there that's going to make you smile or smirk, and then, on the next page, you're going to go, oh shit. It kind of gets phased out, the book starts with a lot more of that stuff in, and then as the stakes get higher and people start dying, and hopefully characters you've invested in, hopefully the humour gets phased out till at the end you're left with, without giving anything away, when the tragedy kicks in, when the tragic aspects of the story kick in, then by that point there's not much left to laugh at for the characters or you. So but that, it's definitely in there, some funny stuff. The W word is, I think you all know what word I'm referring to. In my book they're called half-breed, and that's kind of my own stamp on things there, because with it, you say the word werewolf and it's become cliche almost, and I wanted to avoid all that. That was kind of my springboard, but that's it. I've gone back to the Eastern European, kind of the original folklore, all the stuff with silver bullets and pentagrams and stuff. That was most of that stuff was what Sidomak, created for the Wolfman film. People don't know that, but it kind of all stemmed from that. So you want to scrub all that clean and start fresh. So I don't really mention the W word in the book at all. And when it is mentioned, it's kind of in a antiquated, derogatory sense. It's kind of offensive to the half-breeds, so they get pissed off if you say that. So and that's the characters channeling me as an author, thinking, I've heard this so many times before, how do you put a fresh slant on it? And the first thing I did was trying to avoid any references to the W word.